Hello, everybody. This session is dealing with using OCAD for MapRun courses. It assumes that you have a pretty good handle on how MapRun courses are generally set up with the map file and the course file. And so it's just going to focus on using OCAD for those two outputs that you need for a course. As well as OCAD, we'll look a little bit at Purple Pen, because you can use Purple Pen or OCAD course setting to output a course file from an OCAD map. So essentially, I'll just take you through the creation of those two files, and then a few points about thinking about planning courses using OCAD maps at the end. So we'll start with the KMZ file, and before I go in to start showing you files and things, I think it's important to recognize this issue of Ordnance Survey copyright, because according to the British Orienteering website, OS claim copyright on a very large number of our maps. And I think for ISPROM maps, which are urban sprint maps, almost certainly based on proprietary Ordnance Survey data, will have this kind of issue. If you have a new map which you've created, maybe based on an old map, but you've created it entirely from a LiDAR base, and you've effectively redrawn it to match the LiDAR base, then I think we could probably claim that there is no Ordnance Survey copyright in it. And even if you were to put something like a grid reference on it, although I struggle to believe that that's still copyright, you could just change that to a lat long reference and problem solved, basically. If you've got an old map which has been georeferenced and affined and fiddled with, but it's based on some sort of photogrammetry or other input, then there may well be, again, copyright issues related to it. So all I can do is just suggest that you look at what British Orienteering website says and think quite hard about how you use these maps for MapRun courses if you plan to do so. So I'll just show you what we're going to use today. I've got a number of maps up. I'm going to use an example of an event we organised, a league event we organised in February using Mallard's Pike, top end of Mallard's Pike. So I have the map here, I have a map extract. As you see, it's a very basic bare map extract. I'll come back to that in a minute. I've set up, we use Purple Pen for our events, but I've set up the same event as an OCAD course setting file, so we can compare the two. And then I also have the same event set up in Purple Pen. And you'll notice that we tend to use Purple Pen for quite a lot of our elaboration of the map, rather than using OCAD. That said, if I go back to OCAD a minute, I also have a map here which is slightly different in the sense that it's a different event. It's the map we ran in January. And here you'll notice that, again, we tend to keep a master map and then chop chunks of it out for the events that we want to organize on that area. But you'll notice here that the setup is somewhat different. There's a bit more marginalia around the map. Some of this is layout stuff. So if you're familiar with OCAD 10 or 11, I think, beyond, there is this layout concept where you can have kind of extra stuff on the map. So for this map, some of the background stuff is layout, and some of it isn't. The point I'm making is you don't have to worry too much about this, because when you come to create the KMZ file, you will get whatever is showing. It doesn't matter whether it's built in the layout or whether it's built in the background map. So we'll go back to our basic Mallard's Pike North map. And the first thing we're going to do is create a KMZ file out of it. Before you do that, just note this point here about checking your coordinate reference system. It is possible in OCAD to have a map which has what seem like standard OSGB references, but where the coordinate reference system is not actually set. So if you go into Map, Set Scale, and Coordinate Reference Systems, down here you'll see the coordinate system is British National Grid. As I say, it's perfectly possible to have a map where you've got the right sort of coordinates, but this is not set. And if it's not set, your map will not be in the right place when you export it as a KMZ file. So you need to come in here and make sure it's set correctly. Just by picking the choose button and choosing British National Grid or whatever. I tend to use EPSG codes, but you can use whatever's easiest for you. So provided the map knows what its coordinate reference system is, you're pretty much good to go with creating a KMZ from this. You do need to think about the accuracy of the map, and maybe I'll come back to that a bit later on when we do some checking of the maps that we're going to produce out of this process. So all we need to do really, before we get going with creating a course, is think about whether we want to add any sort of background event level data to the map. And what I mean by that is, as in Open Orienteering Map, if you've used that to create KMZ files, the base map needs to contain anything that is not part of actual courses. If we come over here to look at our Mallard's Pike course map, you'll see in here that if I zoom in here a bit, I've added here, just arbitrarily, a chunk of out of bounds area, and there's another out of bounds. We get rid of this preview. There, we can select that. You'll notice there's an out of bounds area here on top of this old slag heap, and there's another one running along the side of this track here up towards the finish. And if you compare this map with the background map, you'll notice that in the background map, zoom in a bit, I've created both objects as well. This one was always part of the map, actually. This one here, I could pick it. I'll get rid of for the time being, just to illustrate the point. So what I've now got in my background map is an out of bounds area along the side of the track here. Now this one has disappeared. And if I come back to my event map, I've still got it here because it's part of the event map. So it's part of the course setting side of OCAD. And if I just hide that, you'll see what I mean. So I've still got the one on the background map. This one has gone. The point I'm making here is that anything like this, which is part of the course setting map, you will lose when you export the courses. So anything that you need to have on the background map, which needs to represent, for example, a crossing point or a constrict, banned route or out of bounds area like this, needs to be copied onto the background map before you actually generate the background map. Otherwise, you lose it. Bear in mind, though, that the background map for MapRun is the one that goes onto the phone. If you're going to give people paper maps, you don't need to worry so much about this, provided you give them a paper map, which has got all this detail on it. And if we go to the purple pen file, the same applies in here, where we've got a number of restrictions, just slightly differently drawn for the sake of difference. Here, these are part of the purple pen file, and they likewise will be lost when we export the courses from Purple Pen to MapRun. So key point, make sure before you create your KMZ file that you've added anything that you might need to show in the map, on the phone. As I say, the Purple Pen file you might use to print to give people, or the course setting file you might print to give people, is different. And that's probably where you do need to have this stuff. So what we're going to do then, first of all, is export the standard background map, which is that one. Zoom out a bit further. And very simple, simply file export, exactly the same as you would do for an open orienteering map file pretty much. You select an area. If down here there's a part of map button. If you don't click the part of map button, then you'll get a KMZ of the whole file. Here again, a large master file. If you click the part of map button, then you can draw the box around the extent of the map that you actually want for this event. Set your dots per inch. I've set mine at 200 because I've practiced this and I know that this will generate me a file of about 1.5 meg. A little bit too big, but it's perfectly workable for the current versions of MapRun App. So I know my extent. I want to tile it. Typically, there's a button here for tiling. Click the 3 buttons on the right here. Tile it at 512 by 512 pixels, and then hit simply export. Don't worry about that. We know there are hidden symbols on there. What we will get is what we can see on the screen. And then file it away. And if you notice in my file names here, we tend to use underscores, which will not work in MapRun. So we need to change those to dashes and then output the file. Name doesn't matter. So we've now got a background file. If we go over to Google Earth, we can import that into, I can't remember where I put it. I put it there. And it's a KMZ file. So it's there. And that will zoom me to my map extent, show me the map I've got, and then I can just check that that's reasonably well aligned with the real world by highlighting the map in the navigator here, clicking on the little box down at the bottom here, and then sliding, as I would do with any other Google Earth file, to check that my alignment is looking reasonably good. And in a heavily forested area like this, you can really only base it on the tracks and things that you can see. But that's pretty good. So we now have a background file ready to go. And if we look at the size of it in my navigator here, yeah, it's 1.2 meg, so that's fine. Perfectly good for using for MapRun. So creating the background file, very simple, just as easy as it is in the Open Orienteering map. File size we've checked. We've set the tile size. The DPI is 200 dots per inch. It's useful to know that. And of course, if you file it, you'll find your file size is too large. You simply go back and reduce the DPI, re-export the KMZ, and check that that's suitable, or a suitable size for you. Now, this last point here is quite important. What I've shown you is an export of a map which was completely redrawn based on LiDAR data, and therefore is accurate. I'll just show you an example of the sort of things you need to look out for. This Minchinhampton map, which we used for an event in March, beginning of March, is broadly, roughly georeferenced. So it has georeferences on it, but if you zoom in here and with the transparency vaguely set, you can see that the things are a bit off. For example, just in here, there's something which on the map is a blue thing, well or something, I don't know. These two are, if we use the ruler, these two are, you could use the ruler, about 16 meters apart. So not a huge problem, but with a 15-meter punch tolerance, easy to miss. You come over here to this, what looks like a big gully, a couple of trees in it. We zoom in a bit. Sorry, zoom out a bit. Gully with a couple of trees in. There's quite a difference here between these two. So from that gully to this gully is 25 meters. So if you put a control on one of these bushes using this map, it will not be in the right place in Google Earth. That's really the point I'm trying to get across. So you do need to check that your background map, albeit a georeferenced one like this, is actually accurately fitted to Google Earth. The reason this is like it is, of course, is because it's simply been copied in and roughly affine, but it's not been carefully adjusted to fit the real world. It's just an example. So next step now is to produce a KML file. And you can produce the KML file either from OCAD course setting or from Purple Pen. If you get it from Purple Pen, you can actually export each course by course, which is quite useful. If you do it from OCAD course setting, you get everything, and then you have to work with it to try and create the individual course files. Remembering, of course, that in MapRun, a single course for an event like this is a separate MapRun KML file. So you need a separate KML file for each course if you're going to create a suite of courses, MapRun courses for this event. So what we'll do is we'll go into OCAD first of all, and we'll use OCAD course setting to generate a KML file. Now, when you're in OCAD course setting, you have this menu option up here, which gives you a range of things which relates to the course setting part of OCAD and not to the background map. And for this exercise, you need to come down into course setting, select export, and then you need to select courses GPX. If you select courses KMZ, remember you're not trying to create a KMZ file here, and you'll get a file which won't work. Well, it can work, but you have to fiddle with it. So what you need to do is select courses GPX, output the file. I'll just leave the file name the same for the time being. And that's all you need to do. What you get is, we now come into here and I'll open that file. This is a GPX file, so I need to change that. So now there's my file. Click on that. When I get this little pop-up box here, by default, it will show like that. It will have KML Tracks ticked, KML line strings not ticked, and adjust attributes to ground type. Pretty irrelevant, I think, for us. If you leave it like this, what you get is a complete set of, zoom back to Mallard's Pike. What you get is a complete set of all the controls as a set of waypoints here. A single long list in what looks like control number sequence, control number order. That's all you get. This tracks thing is empty, nothing in it. So that's one way of doing it. If you've got that, then the challenge you have now is working out what your courses are from that collection of controls, constructing them from your all controls data set, if you like. So what is easier to do, I'll just delete that so we don't get confused when we come back in again, is to come back to open the file up again. And this time, if you untick create KML tracks and tick create KML line strings, what you will now get is a different set of data. And what you have here is, first of all, the waypoints, which you need. You have to have the waypoints because those are the only things that will work when you create the KML file. But you also get a set of tracks. Now, unfortunately, you look at these and you think, oh, wonderful, I can just take this track here, which consists of a set of points. If I just untick all of these and then take the green one, for example, I've got a track, wonderful. And I can just create a KML file out of that. Sadly not. These points are here and in the correct order, but they're points, they're not waypoints. And as far as MapRun is concerned, it will ignore them and throw an error if you try and create a KML file out of this set of objects here. So the way you have to do it, if you have exported the full set of waypoints out of OCAD course setting, is to look at your list of waypoints here, and then construct a course, in this case the green course, by creating a new object in here, which we put it, let's put it, it's quite difficult when you've got a long list of controls like this to find somewhere to put it. So we just put it up here in the top level, add a folder, and we'll call this green, sake of anything else. We now have an object which down here, which we now need to populate with controls from this lot based on this list. And so it's probably easier to just ignore that. You have to have this in order to get the course here, but probably easier to ignore that, zoom into here, and then start, right, now I've got to construct my green course. So I've got to start with the start. I need to copy that down into here, paste it in there. And then my first control is 39, so I've got to pick that. Control 39, copy it down. I won't drag it down because I'm going to need it for other courses. Put it in here, paste it there, and so on, until I've built the green course. And once I've built the green course, all the way down to F1 at the end, then I simply go File, Save Place As, and I can file that away as my green course KML. I won't do it now because it's not complete, but you get the point. You get the principle of the way you have to use it. So although this lot looks useful, it is useful in the sense that it presents you with a course, which makes it easier to pick the controls you want, but you still have to create a new object in Google Earth, and then copy the controls from the list here down into that new object. As I say, you can't drag them because you're going to need these for other courses. But it's perfectly doable, and you'll know the controls are in the right place. You will need to check that you've got them in the right order. But other than that, then you can use OCAD course setting to construct a set of courses. If, however, you use Purple Pen for your course setup, which I suspect probably more people do than use OCAD course setting, then it gets a whole lot easier. Get rid of that lot. I did just get rid of all the junk that we created. And what we'll do now is go to Purple Pen. And in Purple Pen, same course, same event. What I can do in Purple Pen now is go File, Create GPX file. And at this point, I can choose whether I want to pick up everything or a particular course. If I, for the sake of argument, let's pick up two courses, green and blue, and then we will export those and see what we get. So this is now Purple Pen GB, we'll call it. Save that away, come back to Google Earth, file open, Purple Pen GB, GPX, open. And once again, tick the middle box, untick the top box, and because that will give us the lines, course lines, and then import it. And now what we get is much the same as we had in OCAD, but the list of waymarks is limited to the ones we need for these two courses. And down at the bottom here, we have our two tracks, green and blue, which give us these lines. So if we untick the blue, we can now see the green course. Now in Purple Pen, we need to do the same process if we have picked up two courses. In other words, this is a combination of all the controls we need for both courses. And so we're essentially going to have to do the same as we did in OCAD to separate out the blue course from the green course. So easier still, go back one step, delete this again, come back to Purple Pen and export file, create a GPX file for just one course, just the green course in this case. Okay, so this is PP green. Save that. import it into Google Earth, PP Green, same thing. And now what we have is just one course. Now the point about this course is that we've still got the waypoints, but you'll note they're not in any particular order here. Unlike OCAD, they're not in number sequence. And if you look at the tracks down here, spin that down a bit, track down here, you'll find that points, these ones are in the correct course order, 39, 52, 46. These ones are not. So if you just untick the points there, what you have in your waypoint list, wipe that away. What you have in your waypoint list is, what do I've done something on there. I don't want that in here. I've got all the controls I need, but not in the right order. And also you'll notice that in Purple Pen, the start and the finish controls are not named correctly. So these need to be changed to S1 and F1. Rename that to F1. But now all we need to do is look, right, we've got 39, 52, 46. So now we just drag 39 up to there, 42, drag up to there, 46 is the next one, drag that after 46. Then we go 62, 56, 62, 56, and so on. And simply sort this set of controls by dragging and dropping into the correct course sequence. Now, this waypoint file exactly represents what we want for our course in the KML file. And so we simply go save place as, save it away, and we'll call it Mars Pipe Green, and it's a PXAC course because it's a standard linear course. I could just keep typing, right? All that lot. Saved away. And there now we have the course that we need to load into MapRun. So whether you use Purple Pen or whether you use OCAD, there's not a great deal to choose between them. It really depends on what your practice is in your club or as an individual. But either way, it's pretty straightforward to generate the controls, to generate courses using controls correctly placed. You do, of course, as ever, always need to check as best you can. And it's quite difficult on this course, which is all forest. You can't actually see any of the control sites, whether they're correct or not. But if you show them against the map, then to change the color of that track a bit, you can. Yeah, you can see that the controls match the ground features. And as it happens, I ran this course on Saturday and it works like a dream. And a colleague of mine in NGOC ran this one yesterday, and likewise, it worked perfectly well. So as long as your background map is accurate, if you're picking up the controls from Purple Pen or OCAD course setting, you will get an accurate course. And it will work fine, subject to the usual constraints of running under the canopy, which I'll come on to now. Couple of other points. Note this point at the bottom here. You shouldn't add any extra data into the KML file. There have been quite a few occasions where people have added helpful notes into the KML file, and those have caused the MapRun loader to have a problem. So it doesn't need any further detail. It's not used anywhere in the system, and so it just gets in the way. So don't add anything. All you want is a KML file, start, a sequence of controls, finish, that's it. But as ever, and as we've discussed elsewhere, and that's not really a specific topic for this session, the name of the file is important and will designate what kind of course it is. For the sort of courses I've been talking about, they'll typically be a standard linear course just with a PXAC code. but maybe with a PIN number and what have you on them as well. So I thought I'd finish up with a little bit on thinking about planning considerations if you're using OCAD maps. And the reason for this is that if you're using Open Orienteering map, you're probably in town or semi-rural countryside, and your courses will be simple by and large. If you're going into OCAD territory, you're looking at point controls in quite complex terrain, and you could well be looking at significant problems with people finding the right control and punching. Bear in mind that there'd be no flag there. So the map has to be good and the control has to be accurate. Terrain can make a difference, can make quite a difference. So you may not need to consider your punch tolerance for MapRun courses in this kind of terrain, particularly steep re-entrance, small alleyways, heavy conifer. All of these things will interfere with the accuracy of your phone's GPS system. And you do need to test these courses before you set people loose on them to make sure they do actually work. If I just give you an example, if I can remember where I put it. There's a JC summer events. I have a map here which we're preparing for an event which we're going to run as soon as we're allowed to organise events here. And you can see that it's a sort of semi-OCAD map, or open orienteering map. Point of showing you this is that I ran this yesterday, and this big track junction here, which I thought would be a no-brainer to get a punch at, big clearing in the middle of the forest. You can see that it took me forever, and eventually I gave up. Here's my trace here. I didn't get a punch at all. Bit of a problem there, bit of a problem down in the woods here. So you do need to check very carefully where you have point controls like these, or even fairly simple controls like this, but under the tree canopy, that they're going to work reasonably soundly. Now, 3 of us have checked this, and I'm the only person to have had a problem. But you just do need to keep an eye on these things. And it brings me back to this point about, this point about under the canopy, or where you've got controls down in holes in the ground, you may well want to think about expanding the punch tolerance for your course. One other point worth making is if, for example, you're using an existing map and you've got something like a road crossing, you may have a control either side of the road crossing, and you're likely to find that MapRun will get very confused if those controls are too close to each other. It will tend to punch one of them and not punch the other one, and therefore you will appear to miss punch. Likewise, if you're running a course in, for example, a town park or something like that, where you've got lots and lots of footpaths, quite easy to run quite close to a control, but not nearly as close as you need to go with SEAC, and still get a spurious punch as you go past the control. Shouldn't normally cause a problem, but can cause people to wonder what's going on sometimes. And the other point, of course, is this whole business of accuracy of point features on maps which have not necessarily been very carefully mapped using real data like LiDAR. So you do need to double check, ideally with several visits by different people, if possible, that your point features are correctly positioned with regard to the real world as opposed to where they show on the map. So that's really it. I think it's very straightforward producing courses and background maps from OCAD and from Purple Pen. There are just 1 or 2 little things to watch out for. I think you do need to keep a very close eye on this issue of copyright. To be honest, it's something I really don't understand. But if you read what it says on the British Orienteering website there, it seems to suggest that you're very limited in what you can print on the web and show as a map on the web. if it contains this Ordnance Survey supposed copyright data. Plenty of stuff on the MapRun website about how to set up courses and specifically how to use OCAD. And my notes, which are in my Dropbox, which you can find with a link on these slides, which I guess Peter will distribute. You can find quite a lot of information in there as to how to set up MapRun courses. Currently, it doesn't describe how to do the KML bit, how to purple pen, but it will do soon, I hope. And of course, feel free to email me if you want to, if you've got any other further questions on this. So that's it. Thanks for listening, and hopefully you'll be able to get out soon and get running with some more events. Thanks.